Nerdish, nerdy, nerd news.
Hi, and welcome to Nerdish, Nerdy Nerd News. Come along and ride with us as we explore, discuss, and nerd-splain some of the most interesting topics of today.
Hey, I'm Tim. Hung around with nerds a lot growing up, hoping that it would rub off. I think it kind of did, because I'm kind of nerdish. And as always, my co-hosts.
Hey, thanks, Tim. I'm Christian. I've been playing and writing, creating games and Dungeons & Dragons since high school. My idea of a relaxing weekend is playing vids with my buds online. I also used to do complex math troubles with my dad for fun. I am very nerdy. And with us to help us understand the world a little better.
Hi, I'm Jess. I've been programming and using computers since the early 80s. I'm a voracious reader, consistently going through about 500,000 or more words a month. I've got some biochemistry in my background, and I've been using technology for as long as I can remember. I am the nerd.
So first things first, how's it going, fellas?
Pretty good, pretty good.
Do we want to talk about the excitement of the last weekend gone past, the Gaming Expo?
Oh, it was exciting. And it was the first one that Moose Jaw Gamers have had in 2 years.
Yeah, it was a thrilling, fun-filled pack weekend of all things gaming. We had tons of people, as many as we'd hoped for and planned for. So it was a really good to get out there and start raising funds for charities again.
So what were kind of some of the highlights of the event?
Well, there was a Smash Brothers tournament. There was a Pokemon trainer there to show people how to play Pokemon card game.
A professor.
An
actual, king
certified
of the nerds of Pokemon.
A professor of Pokemon.
Yes.
Yeah.
They actually certified as a professor with Pokemon. Yeah, she was amazing. My little guy just 8 o'clock appointments to meet her and learn Pokemon. He was up. Shot out of bed like a rocket, and he was there at 8 o'clock, ready to learn.
That might be the coolest title ever, actually.
Pokemon Professor.
I am a Pokemon Professor. So it was a good turnout, though?
Yeah, it was pretty good.
I really wanted to join, but I was playing Rockstar again. Still trying to
doing your dance in front of people
that understand who I think I am. Maybe someday. Anyway, topic of the day, fellas.
Well, I mean, I've got my car here. Tim, you ready to go? We'll have a race.
I got a red dinky car with flames,
and I got a white dinky car with pink stripes.
I wish I actually had a car like this. Maybe that'll come someday too, when people understand who I think I am. But anyway, electric cars. Why are they so great?
Well, Christian, you have a hybrid.
I do. I have a Toyota Highlander hybrid, so it's kind of part electric car.
That little one?
No, the big SUV.
So you do have a hybrid electric car. Wow.
Yeah, and it is definitely a big change compared to a regular gas engine for the main idea of fuel mileage, like just around town, things like that. And that's kind of what a lot of the electric cars are doing too, is they're saving that price per gallon.
So when you first got it, what were some of the biggest immediate change or impact that you saw in comparison to a combustion engine?
Well, my wife and I used to have competitions because there was a little history chart. You could see how well you were doing for mileage. And so you'd learn to drive differently. You'd learn to accelerate quickly and then let the vehicle glide when you're not in between like stoplights and stuff, so that you could save on mileage because of regenerative braking, because of all these other technologies that are in it that charge the battery while you're driving. So we would do tons, and like my wife and I, we'd go to a superstore across town and I'd be like, oh, I got 6.2 liters per 100 today, honey.
Wow.
And really it's with the hybrids, it's the in-city driving where you save the money, because when you're sitting at a stoplight and you go to accelerate, that's when you're using more gas than if you're just driving without stopping.
Right.
So with the hybrid, it uses the electric to get you going, and the gas is when you really need power or extra speed. Or
so you do have the regenerative braking in that hybrid.
Yep, just like it is in the pure electric vehicles. does the same thing. It's just in my vehicle, instead of having a giant bank of batteries, it's a much smaller bank.
Oh.
And I don't have the electric motors that are running the wheels. It's still driven by a traditional transmission and a traditional engine. It's just at certain times it can turn on, switch over to electric if you're doing the right speeds with not a lot of torque.
So do you got one pedal or two pedals?
Well, two,
Is it a
because you're
go-kart or
breaking
is
your
it a-
gas.
That's right.
And the passenger has a pair of pedals,
Well,
and they have to
isn't-
pedal too.
But isn't an electric car, like some of these electric cars that are coming out, they got the one pedal because of that braking system. You just release the pedal and then the braking system engages, and that's what we're kind of the
No.
it's a
No,
lunch.
No.
they're still the same. You still have a brake and an accelerator. It's just when you take your foot off the accelerator with a traditional gas engine, you tend to coast more, whereas with the electric, you don't coast quite as much because it's drawing energy from that, not being. And then when you push in the brakes, it actually engages brakes and still draws energy from it too.
See, folks, this is why I hang out with nerds.
And so getting on to like the batteries, like off of my hybrid, which is, a starting point for a lot of people. The Prius is a hybrid. The Highlander's got some. There was a few others, companies back in the early 2000s that had the hybrids, not the pure electrics, simply because I don't think the battery technology was quite there yet. But nowadays, with the new batteries, you're looking at 400, 500, 600 kilometers on a charge. That makes a huge difference. Whereas mine, I can go maybe 2 kilometers on a charge. And that's just because of the hybrid, the smallness of the battery.
So do you just charge it at home then? Like, do you have a charging
It charges
station?
off the gas engine in the vehicle.
It charges, yeah.
Okay.
So the regenerative braking, when the engine is running, portions of that is bled off into the battery charging system, and that's how the hybrids work. Is they'll partially charge while you're driving, but also when you're decelerating. So
this was another thing that I was under the impression too, that when you get these electric cars, we're going to have to get all these charging stations, and it's like a 60 amp charge, like a home is, so the grid might not even be able to take it.
then that right there is kind of a myth that has been perpetuated by, I think, a lot of people just not understanding. One of the biggest things is that we've had, if you look at our electrical system in North America, it has increased from, now I'm just going off of the States because the numbers are a little easier to find than just here in Canada, but as kind of perspective, in the United States in 1960s, the entire kilowatt hours created were 0.76 trillion kilowatt hours. Now that's a huge number, but in 2000, that number had increased to 3.8 trillion kilowatt hours. Now that's coal generation, nuclear, like that is their energy generation as a nation. That's 5-time increase in only 40 years. Now, if we were to start adopting electric cars purely,
Immediately, like no more gas.
no more gas as of today, the percentage is something like 32 to 34, somewhere in there, roughly percentage increase in what we would require for kilowatt hours. So if you're looking at a 500% increase over 40 years, 40% overnight for us to do that isn't really that big.
It would be difficult to immediately do it, and that's why we're not just saying no more gas. We're going to phase them out as we generally move towards that. So like in Canada here, I think there's a few companies that have said we're not going to be producing like gasoline engines, fueled cars in 10 years. They'll be strictly electric. So over 10 years, which is a quarter of the time that we had previously, we're going to have to catch up to that in our power generation. And like we have, like outside of Moose Jaw, we have a new turbo gas plant that's going in that's going to produce megawatts of energy. We have wind generation down by Assiniboia. There's Swift Current has wind generation. These are all clean. Like the turbo gas is about as clean as you can get with fossil fuel type. But the other ones are totally green. totally renewable.
So all the turbulence that everybody talks about transitioning into this system is a little bit exaggerated then?
I think so. Like, one of the major things is if we were told tomorrow we all had to have electric cars, it wouldn't be the grid that would be the problem. Where we would run into the problem is the production. We do not, like, as a globe, as a global economy, we do not have the production ability. Even if every factory was turned over to electric cars, they couldn't produce enough vehicles to supply everyone that year anyways. Like, as it is right now, there's only, I think it's about 10% of global passenger cars are replaced on a yearly basis, either by brand new or someone buying a used one and someone else buying that new one, in North America anyways.
Okay, so, but, all right. What about how these things, how do they hold up in a place like we are here, Saskatchewan, sub-zero temperatures?
And that's a great question. That's one of the big questions. One of the biggest, myths or misunderstandings is that the batteries don't work well in our cold weather. And that's completely wrong.
Yeah, they work at a lower capacity, but they still work exactly the same. So let's say like those batteries I was talking about at the beginning, where you have 400 or 500 kilometers on a charge. Well, during the winter, and a few of my friends, like I've got a friend here in town here, he's got a Mustang. I've got some friends in Saskatoon. They've got a Leaf. And during the winter, their battery goes down to 25, 30, maybe even 30% of its capacity. Well, of 400 kilometers, you're still looking at 250 or so kilometers.
And that's pretty low because the Teslas, from what I understand, there's a Tesla S in Regina, and he did an interview with CBC. You can probably find it still on their website at some point if you look. He was asked about the same thing. You're like, well, what about in the winter? And he says, well, since there's no gas engine, all your heat in the cab is generated strictly by the battery heating up elements, and you blow hot air in, right? So one of the bonuses is that you get hot air right now. You don't have to wait for your car to warm up. You go out, you turn it on, boom, she's warm. Two,
that's nice out here.
He said he does have a reduction in battery, but it's only due to using the battery to heat the car inside.
And just to clarify too, this isn't just like a normal car battery or one big giant battery.
No, it's a special multi-cell, which means like think of your remote control for your TV. You open up the back and there's two AA's, right? Well, imagine a battery that's 5 times the size of that, a cylinder, okay, or a little bigger, but there's 2,500 of them.
All sitting side
by side, all connected up, and they're all lithium, every one of them. And that's what that's what electric cars use, are these banks and banks of these lithium batteries that are, each one is only a few volts, but when you put 2,000 of them together, you get your whatever they run at.
At the end of the day, that's another one of the benefits, as opposed to a combustion engine. Like, there's no components, no parts to these things as far as maintenance goes.
No,
that battery is
the maintenance
main.
is very low. The electricity used to drive, say, 15,000 miles in an EV, like an electric vehicle, so EV would cost about $550 a year, and that's including maintenance. The amount of gasoline to travel that same distance in a typical car is $1,300, so almost three times the cost. There's very few parts that wear out, which means fewer bills for the mechanics, because you don't have pistons flying at 7,000 RPMs. It is 4 electric motors, not engines, 4 motors hooked up to 4 wheels, which is why most electric vehicles are also all-wheel drive.
And traction controlled.
Mm-hmm. Maintenance costs...
there's no oil changes, there's no transmission fluid flushing or anything like that, there's no radiators, there's no...
There's basically your tires, your shock absorbers, your struts that are common components to both vehicles. Those ones will wear out the same way that they would.
So still like brake pads and
brake
shoes.
pads,
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, tires, brake pads, struts, springs, windshield fluid,
Yeah, like the average maintenance cost for most AVs is around $330 a year, as compared to the average cost for a gas engine is around $4,600 in repairs and maintenance over the life of the vehicle.
So in the long run, you're saving a bundle.
And you're not
Essentially.
having to take it like every 6 months to get an oil change. Or
So then what's the life expectancy on these batteries then?
most batteries run between 10 and 15 years, depending on how often you recharge it, how much you use it, things like that. Generally, it's the lower end because that's...
And when you say the life they mark that differently. So usually they set a benchmark of 80% of what it was originally when you had it from the factory. So even when Jess says it's 10 to 15 years and the battery, life, quote unquote, is dead, well, it's probably, you could keep driving on it. It's just you're not getting the 400 kilometers you were getting. Right. You're maybe only getting 200 or 250. So you've got reduced mileage, but the battery can be replaced. And because they are lithium, the lithium can be pulled out, recycled, reused, and made into new batteries for the next generation.
I can't imagine that's going to be at a price, though. And what I hear is that the price of these things are quite high.
Right now, because there's very few of them on the road, it is quite high. It's the same as if you had a DeLorean and you needed to replace the drive shaft. Well, you're going to have to go get it specially made because there's no DeLoreans on the road.
Yeah, but I'm using garbage as fuel, so
so Mr. Fusion. So yeah, with the electric vehicles, it's the same thing. There's so few of them on the road. There's so few service centers, and they really have only been around for about a decade. We're really just starting to see that coming up, and the price is a little high for replacing those battery banks. I can't remember exactly, but let's say if you bought a Tesla for $70,000 to replace the battery packs on it. Now, I might be totally wrong on this because this is like from a while ago. You might be paying $12,000, which is like 1/5 the cost of that
I think
car.
they've come down quite a bit now.
I'm
I
sure.
think they're in the 6,000 to 8,000.
So,
and that's
still,
just in a number of years.
Yeah. So as we get more and more electric vehicles on the road, with more and more places making the parts, with more and more mechanics knowing how to do what they need to do on them, and the availability of that, like once you've done one battery change, the next one's easier, and we start getting that where you get the new battery, you send the old one in for recycling, rejuvenation, and it comes back, and we get that sort of cycle going. We'll see the prices come down. It might only be like
supply and demand.
Yeah, you pay a core price, like a deposit on a battery right now, which you get back when you take it in.
But the fun part, here's the fun part about electric cars, though. The very fun part is how fast they can go, Tim. We were talking earlier about having a big old muscle car, and my friend who's got the new Mustang Mach-E, and people are kind of joking, oh, it's not really a Mustang, it's it does look like an SUV. But those types of cars can go 0 to 60 in 2 to 3 seconds.
Okay, so now this is one thing I have heard, right? But that torque, it cannot be sustainable because of the battery. Right.
You're using more battery to get to that speed, absolutely. Like you will burn more of your battery, because just like turning your light on in your house, if it's got a dimmer switch and you crank that right up to full brightness, absolutely it's using more energy.
Because I know my golf cart, it moves initially.
And that's the great thing about using an electrically driven motor. You're only using as much energy to generate as much torque until it slips, so the tire starts slipping. So the car itself figures that all out with the traction control and everything. So you could floor it, but you'll never spin the tires. You'll always have the maximum acceleration.
And the bonus to that is you've got a giant battery pack in there adding weight that is low to the ground, because just about every electric vehicle, that battery pack is right on the frame, right as low as it can get. So you've lowered the center of gravity on a typical vehicle. If you had two vehicles identical, one electric, one gas, that electric vehicle center of gravity is lower, its weight is probably a little higher, but due to the fact that it has electric motors, they have unbelievable torque.
So from everything we've said so far, let's. I can see Tim starting to do a little bit of the. I need to use the washroom dance here, so we'll take a break in a moment here. But just before we go, right now, when you drive your regular vehicle.
Thanks, by the way, for letting 1 million people know that.
Well, you were there to do the dance. It was pretty obvious.
It's a nerdy dance. It's the nerd dance.
So here's the thing. All right, you're driving your car right now. It's a whatever. I don't know what you drive because I've never really cared to even bother to look. But let's just say you're driving a Ford Escort.
Nope. Let's say Honda Civic.
Honda Civic. So the average
you're
cost,
classy.
the average cost for driving a gasoline vehicle, this is including everything figured all out so we have apples to apples, right, is about 12 cents per kilometer. Okay. That's on an average miles per gallon or 100 or clicks.
Why do you guys always get me to do the math?
Okay, no, but this is easy.
Nerds love math.
An electric vehicle.
I gotta learn to love math.
An electric vehicle for the same distance with roughly the same usage of electricity for energy wise, things like that, is 2 cents per kilometer.
No.
Yes.
Really? I'm getting an electric car and I'm naming it Kit.
Now remember, that's at like what Saskatchewan's current power costs are, and you have to take into account like the loss of power through transmission of lines, and because you don't get 100% power when you run it through an extension cord.
We'll come back to that after the break. We'll take a quick break here for Tim's bladder, and we'll be right back with more electric cars.
Right arm.
Nerdish, nerdy, nerd news.
And we're back. Thanks, guys. Really needed that. What were we talking about? We were talking about price and torque and all kind of things.
And mileage.
And mileage.
Yeah.
We're kind of getting into the actual
bang for the buck.
Yeah, and the costs that people are trying to dissuade people from using electric vehicles, because there's a lot of myths and misconceptions out there about what it actually costs people, what the range is, and all those things. With the current price of gas being at around $1.30, $1.40 per liter, like Jess was saying, the average vehicle in Canada gets 8.9 liters per 100. And I know the way Tim drives, he's probably about 15 liters per 100.
Easily.
So, that's where you get that 2 cents per kilometer for an electric vehicle and 12 cents per kilometer, in Tim's case, 24 cents per kilometer.
Easily.
When you're burning as much oil as you are gas. But like I say, that's the average, right? So we're just looking at averages of what these things cost, how easy they are to change into. A lot of the electric vehicles, too, it's no different. You've still got a gas pedal. You've still got a brake pedal. You've got a steering wheel. Beyond that, all the other bells and whistles, Teslas have these big 17-inch monitors with all their things in them that they can do. But even the more simpler ones, like the Model E's and stuff, which are kind of their entry-level Teslas, or the Nissan Leafs, or the Toyota. They have a couple new ones coming out this year. Ford's got an F-150. They're actually branched.
Oh, I really like this F-150. It is pretty cool.
They've got full-size pickups now coming out this next year that are pure electric.
See, and as I listen to this stuff too, I just can't keep thinking of how much this is actually changing industry, period, though. We're talking about mechanics. They're going to have to change their whole skill set.
We're not going to see gasoline engines disappear overnight.
Right.
It's going to be a gradual thing. There's something like 35-point-something million registered vehicles on the road in Canada today.
But the electronics in these things have to be quite complicated, I would imagine.
The cars today have quite a few electronics in it.
I suppose.
And a lot of them, too, they're pretty good at self-diagnosing. They will tell you exactly what is wrong. Front electric motor on front left wheel has got a 20% drag or something like that. There's something wrong with it. It'll tell you. It narrows it right down. You don't have to just take it to your mechanic and have him listen to it and go, oh, yeah, it does sound funny.
Yeah,
that's not really...
You don't have to plug in a special computer and have it spit out some code that you have to look up in a book that looks like the thickness of a Bible to figure out what's wrong. It's like you literally go and push a button on a screen. It comes up with here's what's wrong.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, EVs currently in the US and Canada, they're only currently at a 2% adoption rate of all new vehicles. So we're not seeing a huge increase in the purchase of them. EVs globally only make up about 10% of all new passenger vehicles. So, I mean, even at a 10%, and that's 10% of new vehicles purchased, right? Like, you got to remember, not everyone buying a vehicle is buying a new vehicle. So it's
just in Saskatchewan, we only have about 1,000.
When is the idea that this is going to completely take over? What is their projections there? Like, when are we going to see that this is real?
Well, most of the manufacturing companies like Ford and GM and such are saying like by 2035 they will be producing no gasoline, no petrol vehicles anymore. Or if they do, it'll be a single model, right? Everything else will be electric.
So, like Bloomberg had done a study that revealed they're expecting that new vehicle sales will be at 28% by 2030. So that's 8 years from now. And 58% of all new vehicles by 2040. Even their probably fairly conservative estimates are still only putting 58% of vehicles in, the next 2 decades that are going to be purchased as electric vehicles. So there's still a large portion of the world that's going to have to be using gas engines just due to the availability of some of the charging stations.
And again, it's about the cost. Like when you go to buy an electric vehicle like that F-150 we were talking about, it's not out yet. It's due to come out, I believe, sometime this year or early next year. Mm-hmm. Your entry price, that's just a basic F-150, no bells and whistles, is like $80,000. So they're expensive.
I'm never going to have one.
Well, that's
I'm going to be living
expensive.
in mine at that.
But that's
price.
actually, when you consider it, you look at an F-150.
Base price of one of them is 45 to 50, just for no bells and whistle gas powered engine.
Yeah. So as we start producing, as they start producing more and more of these, and they get more and more adopted, you're going to see the prices drop.
Yeah.
Well, they're going to have to if they want people to transition into it. There's that, because otherwise that's kind of a catch-22 there a little bit, right?
Yeah, well, and the charging infrastructure is coming too, right? Like, that's the other half of this is, it's great if you have an electric vehicle, but if you can only charge it at home, well, what are you going to do with it when you go out? And that's been actually changing. There was Sun Country Highways that went through all of Canada 5-6 years ago. Tesla's been putting up their supercharging stations. We've got one here in Moose Jaw. There's actually, I counted the other day, there's 6 that I could count. There's 6 charging stations plus the Tesla here in town. Across North America, there's over 440,000 charging stations, some being Teslas, but many of them are these private companies that have trying to draw people into their stores, trying to draw people into their restaurants.
Well, yeah, there's a little restaurant in Bigger, I believe.
Yep.
And they have a charging station outside that costs nothing. You you go up, you plug in, and it charges your vehicle, and you can go in and have a coffee and a piece of pie or something for the 20 minutes it takes to charge you up to full or whatever it was you're needing, right? So, and that's amazing business sense by them, because for them it costs them pennies to charge that vehicle. Maybe $1. Let's say they're right almost dead, and it costs them like $3 to fill that vehicle with power, which is literally what it costs to charge a battery from nothing.
And maybe a couple thousand to put the unit in, because it's not a supercharger, but it's a rapid charger. So
someone comes in and they're going to be in there for 40 minutes. They sit down, they have lunch or snack, and they buy food, they drink coffee, they have a piece of pie, and then they're on their way. Well, they've brought in customers.
Yeah, it's a new way to think of business now. That people are actually thinking that pulling EVs and EV customers into their business is a benefit. And they've set up, PV Mart here in town. They've got charging stations.
Yeah, there's PV Mart, there's the Ford, there's the GM, there's the Tesla.
Yeah, right, and then the Tesla one's right inside that new mini mall.
Yeah, so there's like a couple of restaurants, a coffee place, a liquor store. There's all kinds of things that you can go and shop while you're charging.
So this is where we're going.
It's really, I think that's what's going to be. Yeah, I know in the States and a lot of places there are parking lots outside of Walmarts and what have you, where it's electric vehicle only, and there's a charging spot right there. Yeah. It's just like a gas station. You have to, pay for your charging, but still, you can go do your shopping while your card charges up for a few bucks.
I'm going to just ask another question, or maybe we want to talk about it, maybe we want to save it for another day, but is there alternatives to this alternative? The fuel cell, for example.
Yeah, there's hydrogen, which is another one that it's being used in a lot of places. I believe buses in Victoria have been using hydrogen fuel cells for quite some time. I might be wrong on that, but
there are a few municipalities that are using it simply, and a lot of it too comes down to you can convert many gas engines into hydrogen fuel cells fairly simply. The only problems that they run into is it's usually about a 30% loss in power, even with the same engine. But, on something like a bus, I mean, you're not putting the pedal to the metal and going, 60 miles an hour. You're not doing speed with Keanu Reeves here.
Yeah. Or you have a hydrogen bomb underneath the hood, too.
Yeah, and that was the other thing. There's a lot of concern about, it's explosive. It's very, very deadly. It leaks very easily if it's not properly maintained. There's a lot of problems with it, but we've gotten to the point now where they've got these gas tanks where they can take an impact at 100 kilometers an hour and they just crumple but don't leak. They don't explode. They've developed them to be like a foam inside, a metal foam, so that, they're completely different.
Completely safe, yeah.
Yeah, but the hydrogen one, the problem with them is you have to create the hydrogen. There is no place where you can just drill in the ground and pull out hydrogen gas. You have to make it, and the way they make hydrogen gas is by breaking it out of water. Well, breaking it out of water takes a lot of electricity. Yeah, so why don't we just skip that and go electric vehicles?
Yeah, I was going to say it just kind of seems that this is where we're going.
The next level of electricity is actually, and I know there's a couple Japanese labs that are working on these. The batteries, instead of using these rare earth minerals that we've been using, like lithium, where we have to, and that the environmental concerns behind that of strip mining to get the lithium and stuff out. The next step is actually organic batteries. So they are going to start growing batteries.
I saw an article just a little while ago, now you say that, about a carbon-based battery. Really? So it doesn't use lithium, it doesn't use nickel, it doesn't use, and I didn't understand the chemistry, even though I have a background in chemistry because it was pretty complex. But it uses a carbon isomer, I don't know, like some kind of carbon base, totally non-toxic, completely safe.
Yeah,
and it charged and discharged better than a lithium battery. It didn't have a memory like the old, the old lead acid or nickel cadmium ones. If you didn't discharge them all the way and then charge them fully, they'd start getting a memory and they'd only charge halfway. Yeah. They don't have that.
Well, and then they did degrade just the same as a regular battery does. But once you're done, they actually pull all the carbon back out. They put it in these beds, basically like a grow op. They've got these beds where they lay all the battery stuff out. That recharges it and it starts growing and turning back into itself, like turning back into a usable product. So they literally have to do nothing other than pull it out of the battery, put it back to where it was, and then give you the new stuff in your new battery.
And you literally have to be a nerd to come up with any of this at all. See how important.
It's pretty cool because these carbon batteries, like, you plug your phone in, and in your phone and almost anything that you're using today that uses batteries is a lithium battery that's rechargeable. Your phone will take, depending if it's a fast charge or not, maybe 40 minutes or something like that. These things are like 10. From totally dead to a full charge. It is absolutely fantastic.
Nerds
so what do you think your next car is going to be now?
I told you I'm going to be getting an electric car. I'll be living it with the price I'll be paying for it, but I'm going to name it Kit. And life will be grand.
We'll have to design one of those red LED things for the front for you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I bet you could too.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get you out. We'll get you out with my buddy in his Mustang Mach-E, and we'll get him to push you into the seat with the G forces. It's like nothing I've ever felt. Like, I've been on roller coasters my whole life, and I've never felt that type of G force.
Yeah, with a gas engine, you get that initial, unless you're in like a drag car or a stock car or something, you get that initial oomph, and then it's it's sort of gone. With this thing, it's like, no, it's like a hand pushing you back into the seat for as long as he's accelerating.
Yeah, like the new, like just as a reference, the new Roadster or the new Tesla Roadster does 1.9 seconds to 60 miles per hour. So 1, 2. That's it.
That's
and
it.
you're at
We're there.
Yeah.
We're there, man. We're there.
Yeah. Just
and that's a $200,000 car. That's it. Like compared to
that's not a big deal
but
at all.
compared to the gas version,
Yes.
which is going to cost you 1.5 to 2 to 3 to $10 million for your, Bugatti Veyron, to pay for that type of acceleration and performance, you've got to get into the millions and millions of dollars. And that's where the EVs just they trounce anything gas related.
I tell you what, I talk to you guys and I get so excited about the next 10, 20, 30, 40, 150 years. It's so cool.
Well, wait till we start talking about cryogenics, and maybe you'll last that 150 years.
Maybe join Timothy Leary. Anyway, what else can we touch on as far as electric cars go?
I want one. I want the F-150.
Yeah,
That's coming up. It's pretty cool.
guys
Well, and
talk
some of
me
the
into
cool
it, too.
features, I know, like we've talked about this before, some of the cool features is the F-150 is one of the first vehicles that has integrated into it that when it's plugged into your house, it's a battery backup for your house. Not only does it charge from your house, if the power goes out, the vehicle will keep your house running for, I think it's up to like 8 to 10 hours.
Yeah, if you don't have air conditioning and you don't use your stove, like the big power items, from what I understand, it'll keep your house, your furnace and lights and things like that going for a couple days.
So, I mean, if everyone starts to have that, then power issues, if we have power issues, storms, things like that, it's also now a safety issue. You've got an electric vehicle. Okay, great. You and your family are safe when the power goes out. You don't have to put $20,000 into a generator to have a backup generator. You can save that $20,000 and put it towards an actual vehicle that you can use.
And how often has your power generator actually started up since you bought it, Christian?
Shut up, Jess. It's been 8 months and I'm waiting for the power to go out. All these planned outages. Yeah, so Jess is poking fun at me because I did put in a big giant $20,000 generator as power backup. So.
And the power hasn't gone out since. Thanks, Christian.
You're welcome.
But you're ready. You're ready.
Yeah. So that's where the next step of the electric vehicle comes in. Is now it's not just a vehicle to get you around. It's now a safety feature to protect your family when the power goes out. And in our climate at minus 40, that's a big bonus.
Well, I think you talked me into it. Thanks once again for the education.
Well, this has been fun. I like talking about stuff like this.
Well, I'm glad we could kind of touch base on this, you guys. Look forward to the next time we can sit down and chat.
And I feel one step closer to becoming a nerd. Thanks again for letting us into your ear holes with this nerdish, nerdy nerd news podcast. Check out our website at wildshot.ca.
You can find us on all the socials under Nerdish, Nerdy, Nerd News. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. You can also subscribe and support us at patreon.com/nerdish to get more bonus content, show notes, and merch.
If you'd like to send us topics for future episodes or comment about our existing ones, please email us info@wildshot.ca. And remember, stay nerdy.
Nerdish, nerdy, nerd news.